Somewhere in Antarctica, in one of the emptiest, coldest places on the whole planet, a group of scientists did something you almost never hear about. They sat down and wrote a news report about something that has not happened yet. They wrote it early on purpose. They believe whatever they are watching could fall apart so fast and so suddenly that they want to be ready the moment it happens. Not next year, not in 10 years, maybe this year, maybe this month, maybe today, while you are watching this video. What they are watching is a wall of ice bigger than most countries on Earth. It has been slowly cracking apart for 20 years, and right now it is falling apart faster than anyone expected. When it finally breaks, it will not flood a single street the same day. Nobody's basement is going to fill up with water tomorrow morning, but it is going to set something in motion that cannot be stopped. Something that could keep going for hundreds of years after everyone watching this video is gone. Today we are talking about the most dangerous piece of ice on the entire planet, why scientists nicknamed it the Doomsday Glacier, and the one small thing standing between it and total disaster. That thing is falling apart right now, and once it is gone, nothing is left to replace it. Let's get into it. Section 1. The biggest wall of ice on Earth. Let's start with the glacier itself. Once you understand just how big this thing really is, everything else in this video is going to hit a lot harder. Antarctica is not like anywhere else on Earth. It is the coldest place on the planet and the windiest place on the planet, and almost nobody lives there. About 90% of all the ice on Earth sits on top of this one continent. Parts of it are so remote that a human foot has probably never touched the ground there. Deep inside West Antarctica sits a glacier called Thwaites. Most people have never heard that name before, but scientists gave it a nickname that is a lot easier to remember. They call it the Doomsday Glacier. That is not some scary nickname someone made up on the internet to get clicks. Scientists who study ice for a living came up with it because of exactly how much damage this one glacier could cause if it ever fully melted away. So how big are we actually talking about? Thwaites is roughly the same size as the state of Florida. If you are not from the United States, think of the entire country of Great Britain instead. One single glacier sitting there about the size of a whole country. It is not just wide, it is thick too. In some spots, Thwaites is more than 2,000 meters thick. That is more than a mile of solid ice, stacked straight up into the sky. Try stacking 5 Empire State Buildings on top of each other, roof to roof. Even then, in some spots, you still would not reach the top of this ice. Here is the number that actually matters, though. If Thwaites ever melted completely, all by itself, it holds enough water inside it to raise the sea level across the entire planet by a little over 2 feet. 2 feet does not sound like a lot the first time you hear it, so think about it this way. You are standing at the beach, right where the water touches the sand at your feet. Now that same water is sitting almost up to your knee all the time on every coastline on Earth. Streets that never used to flood would start flooding. Homes that have never seen ocean water inside them would start seeing it. And that is just from this one glacier, just Thwaites on its own with nothing else added. That is why scientists worry about it so much. It is exactly why they gave it that nickname in the first place. A glacier that big, sitting on land, slowly sliding toward the ocean, is a slow-motion disaster waiting to happen. But here is the part almost nobody talks about. Thwaites is not simply melting from the top down, like an ice cube left out in the sun. Something else has been happening, something that has been building for 20 years. And it is about to reach a breaking point. Before we get into that, if this is already blowing your mind a little, stick around, because it only gets wilder from here. This channel digs through real science, actual studies that real scientists are publishing right now, and turns them into stories that make sense without the boring jargon nobody asked for. If you want to know about stuff like this before most people even hear about it, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are going to keep following this glacier as it happens, and you will not want to miss what comes next. Now let's talk about the one thing that has been protecting this giant glacier for years, because that protection is about to disappear. Section 2, the last thing. Holding it back, Thwaites does not just sit there on its own. Out in front of it, floating right on top of the ocean, there's a huge slab of ice called the Eastern Ice Shelf. Think of it like a giant ice raft, still connected to the glacier behind it, but floating out over open water instead of resting on solid land. This ice shelf is not small either. It is roughly the size of Greater London. But its size is not even the important part. What actually matters is what this ice shelf has been doing all these years. That floating shelf works like a brake. You are standing at the top of a steep hill, holding onto a heavy shopping cart, and there is a big rock sitting right in front of the wheels. As long as that rock stays put, the cart cannot roll forward. The second that rock gets kicked out of the way, the cart takes off, and there's no stopping it once it really gets going. That is exactly what this ice shelf has been doing for Thwaites this whole time. It is the rock in front of the wheels. It presses back against the glacier and slows down how fast all that ice behind it can slide into the ocean. Now for the part that should genuinely surprise you, This entire massive ice shelf is not held in place by some giant wall of frozen ground. It is mostly held in place by one single spot. One rocky point way down under the water, where the bottom of the ice shelf catches on the seafloor like a fingernail catching on the edge of a table. Stop and think about that for a second. A sheet of ice roughly the size of a major city, propped up and held steady by one single point of contact. It is a little like trying to balance your kitchen table on only one leg and expecting it to hold forever. For a long time, that one spot held on just fine. But scientists have been watching it closely for the last 20 years, using satellites circling far overhead and instruments they carried out and planted right into the ice by hand. What they found was not good news. Cracks have been slowly spreading out from that one rocky point year after year, getting bigger the whole time. It is like watching a crack creep across a car windshield, except this crack has been spreading for 2 full decades, and it has not stopped once. Now, in 2026, everything is sped up in a big way. A scientist named Robert Larder, who works with the British Antarctic Survey and has spent years studying this exact glacier, said something scientists almost never say out loud. He said the ice shelf is very likely to break apart this year, not in 10 years, not in 50 years, this year. Larder also shared a detail that should give you actual chills. On one side of the shelf, the ice has been moving almost twice as fast as it was just 8 months earlier. This is not some slow, gentle process anymore. This is ice picking up speed in real time, right now, while you're sitting here watching this video. And here's the detail that still gets me every time I think about it. Scientists at the British Antarctic Survey are so certain this could happen suddenly, without much warning, that they already wrote up their announcement in advance. They even call it the ice shelf's obituary, a report sitting ready to publish the second this ice finally breaks away, because nobody wants to be caught off guard when it happens. Sit with that for a second. Scientists are so sure something massive is about to happen that they wrote the news story for it before it has even occurred. So why now? Why is this one spot, the same spot that is held on for who knows how many years, suddenly falling apart after 2 decades of slow, steady cracking? To answer that, we need to travel somewhere nobody can actually see with their own 2 eyes. Section 3. The silent attack. From below here is something most people get wrong about melting ice. They picture the sun beating down from above, slowly melting everything the way a popsicle melts on a hot summer day. And sure, that does happen sometimes, but that is not what is destroying this particular ice shelf. This attack is coming from underneath, in water so dark and so cold that almost no human being has ever laid eyes on it. To understand why, scientists first needed to know what the ground actually looks like underneath all of Antarctica's ice. That sounds simple enough, but it really is not. Antarctica is buried under ice that is, in some places, thicker than any building humans have ever put up. For decades, nobody truly knew what the land hidden underneath all of it actually looked like. You cannot exactly dig a hole through 2 miles of solid ice to check. So scientists got creative. They flew airplanes back and forth over the ice for years, dragging special radar equipment behind them that can see straight through solid ice, almost like an X-ray for an entire continent. They used ships out on the water and satellites orbiting up in space. And if you can believe it, they even dug up old records from expeditions that explored Antarctica using dog sleds decades and decades ago. In 2025, an international team of scientists finally finished building the most detailed map ever made of the ground buried underneath Antarctica's ice. It took more than 60 years of information altogether to build. They stripped away every bit of ice on the map and revealed the bare rock hiding underneath the whole time, all 27 million cubic kilometers of it, peeled back like a blanket pulled off a bed. And what they found changed the way scientists understood this entire situation. Most people assume solid ground always sits above sea level, the way a hill or a mountain does. But large parts of West Antarctica, exactly where Thwaites happens to sit, are actually resting inside deep, bowl-shaped dips that sink down below sea level. It is like a giant soup bowl buried underneath the ice, except this bowl is big enough to fit a small country inside it. This detail matters for one big reason. Ocean water is not the same temperature all the way through, top to bottom. Deep down, underneath the cold surface layer we usually picture, there is a layer of water that is warmer and saltier than the rest. Normally, that warmer water would just stay out in the open ocean, minding its own business. But because the ground underneath West Antarctica dips down into these low, bowl-shaped areas, that warm water is able to travel inland underneath the ice itself, sneaking farther and farther in, right up against the icy edges and the one rocky point holding everything together. It is a little like someone sneaking a warm water bottle underneath your blanket while you're sound asleep. You never see it happen. You never feel the room around you get any hotter. But that heat is sitting right there against you the entire time, working on you from somewhere you cannot even see. That is exactly what has been happening underneath Thwaites. The warm water is not attacking from the sky above. It is creeping in from below, eating away at the ice in the rocky point, holding it steady in total darkness, in a place where nobody can watch it happen. And all of that warm water has to be coming from somewhere. Here's a wild way to picture it. Think about all the extra heat that has been trapped here on Earth over the last 100 years or so, thanks to pollution building up steadily in our air. Now slice all of that trapped heat up like a pizza into 10 equal pieces. The ocean does not eat just 1 or 2 slices and call it a day. It eats about 9 slices out of 10, nearly the whole pizza. That heat has to go somewhere, and an enormous amount of it is heading straight toward the underside of one of the most fragile glaciers on the entire planet. This is not a secret weather machine, and it is not a made-up conspiracy either, even though you will find people online claiming exactly that. This is simply what happens when an entire planet's oceans keep soaking up more and more heat, year after year, decade after decade. 9 slices out of 10 pizza slices worth of heat does not just disappear into thin air. It has to land somewhere. Right now, a huge amount of it is landing directly underneath the one rocky point holding Thwaites together. So the ice shelf is being attacked from below, the crack has been spreading for 20 years, and it might break apart any day now. That alone should already worry you. But this is where things actually get worse, because once that shelf goes, the story does not stop there. In a lot of ways, it is only just beginning. Section 4. The snowball that can't be stopped. Let's clear something up first, because the rest of this section only makes sense once you understand one detail. The ice shelf we have been talking about this whole video is already floating on the ocean. It has been floating there a very long time. And here is a strange fact about floating ice that most people never think about. When floating ice melts, it does not actually raise the sea level at all, because it was already pushing its own weight out of the way in the water the entire time it sat there floating. Do not just take my word for it. Try this yourself sometime. Fill a glass all the way to the top with water, then drop a few ice cubes in, right until the water is sitting almost at the rim, nearly ready to spill over. Now watch closely as those ice cubes melt away. The water does not spill over the edge. It stays exactly where it was the whole time. So if this floating ice shelf breaks apart tomorrow morning, the ocean is not suddenly going to rise the very next day. That part is completely true, and anyone telling you otherwise is either mistaken or trying to scare you for no good reason. But here is the trap hiding inside this whole story. The ice shelf breaking apart was never actually the real danger by itself. The shelf was only ever the break. The real danger has always been the giant glacier sitting behind it, resting on solid land, way down below sea level, quietly waiting for that break to finally disappear. Once that break is gone, Thwaites is not going to sit there peacefully like nothing happened. It is going to start sliding forward, faster and faster, straight toward the ocean, simply because there is nothing left behind to hold it back anymore. And this is where things get genuinely scary because of something that works a lot like a snowball rolling down a snowy hill. At first, the snowball is small, and it rolls pretty slowly. But every second it keeps rolling, it picks up more snow along the way, which makes it bigger, which makes it roll even faster, which lets it pick up even more snow than before. It keeps feeding itself, over and over, faster each time, and once it really gets going, there is nothing anyone can do to stop it until it finally reaches the bottom of the hill. That is close to what happens once a glacier like Thwaites starts sliding into water that gets deeper and deeper the further inland you travel. As the ice slides into deeper water, more of its edges start floating instead of resting on solid ground, which means even more ice gets exposed to that warm water we talked about earlier. That makes the ice slide even faster, which exposes even more ice, which speeds everything up again. It turns into a loop that keeps feeding itself, and once it truly kicks into gear, there may be no natural way left to stop it. Scientists have already spotted signs that this process might be starting. Ice, sitting nearly 60 miles inland from the coast, far from the open ocean, has already started getting thinner. That happens to be exactly the kind of clue you would expect to see if this loop has already begun turning. So just how bad could this actually get? In early 2026, a scientist named Daniel Goldberg and his team at the University of Edinburgh ran the numbers using 2 separate computer models, both tested carefully against more than a decade of real data collected straight from the glacier itself. Both models pointed toward the same unsettling answer. By the year 2067, Thwaites alone could be losing somewhere between 180 and 200 billion tons of ice every single year. That number is so massive, it barely means anything just hearing it out loud, so let's break it down. If you tried to count that many 1-ton chunks of ice, one every single second, without ever stopping to sleep or eat, it would take you more than 6,000 years just to finish counting them all, and that would only be the amount lost in one single year, from one single glacier. Put another way, that is roughly the same amount of ice the entire continent of Antarctica is losing today, all coming from just this one glacier by itself. Here is the part that should really grab you, though. Normally, when scientists build prediction models like this, they actually hope the scariest predictions turn out to be the ones that do not match reality very well. That would mean the worst case outcome is probably wrong. But that is not what happened here. The models that matched what has actually been happening to Thwaites the best were the exact same models predicting the biggest losses in the future. The more accurate the science gets, the worse the prediction looks. That is not something scientists ever really want to see. And Thwaites is not sitting out there completely alone either. It has neighboring glaciers right beside it, holding up other parts of West Antarctica, kind of like a row of dominoes standing side by side. Push the first domino over hard enough, and the ones standing next to it do not get a say in the matter. They fall too. If Thwaites keeps sliding the way scientists currently think it might, it could end up dragging down a much larger stretch of West Antarctica's ice right along with it. That entire section of ice, if it all eventually slid into the ocean, holds enough water to raise sea levels around the whole world by about 10 feet. That is taller than a basketball hoop. 10 feet of ocean added onto every coastline on the planet would put hundreds of millions of people's homes at risk, in low-lying countries and in some of the biggest, most crowded cities in the world. That is the size of what is slowly getting set into motion right now. Not overnight, but once it truly starts rolling, it may be almost impossible to stop. Section 5. What happens next? Let's bring this back down to earth for a second, because I do not want you closing out of this video thinking your street is about to flood next week. That is not what is happening here. The full collapse of Thwaites and everything connected to it would play out over decades, maybe even centuries. A wall of ice this massive does not just vanish overnight. Anyone telling you the ocean is going to swallow your city by next month simply is not telling you the truth. That kind of exaggeration actually makes it easier for people to ignore the real story, because it starts sounding way too much like a movie to take seriously. Here is what is actually happening in plain terms. The ice shelf, the break we talked about, could break away from Thwaites at almost any moment now. Scientists like Robert Larder believe it could happen this year. When that finally happens, it will not raise the ocean that same day. But it will remove the one thing that has been slowing this glacier down for years. Once that break disappears, the slow, steady slide toward the ocean is very likely to speed up. And once a slide like that really gets rolling, just like that snowball from before, it does not really care whether we want it to stop. Even if every single person on Earth stopped adding pollution into the air the very next morning, scientists believe the sea level rise already set into motion would likely keep happening for a long time afterward. It is a little like letting go of a bowling ball right at the top of a ramp. The second it leaves your hand, it is already too late to change your mind about it. Something else has already taken over. You will probably also come across people online claiming this whole thing is some kind of secret plot, like a hidden weather weapon being used on purpose. That is simply not true, and it is worth saying clearly. The heat causing all of this comes from Earth's entire ocean system slowly soaking up extra warmth, spread out across an area covering most of our planet. No machine on Earth is anywhere near powerful enough to aim that much heat at one single glacier on purpose. This is not a secret plan hiding in the shadows. It is simply what happens when an entire planet quietly warms up, decade after decade. The reason you probably have not heard much about this before today is actually pretty simple too. There is no single dramatic moment to put on the evening news. No explosion, no one clear picture that sums up the whole story in a single headline. It is a slow story, unfolding over years, and slow stories tend to lose out to whatever feels loud and urgent that particular day. But slow does not mean small. Slow just means most people are not watching closely enough to notice it happening right in front of them. So keep an eye out from here on. At some point, maybe this year, maybe next year, you are going to see a headline saying that Thwaites' eastern ice shelf has finally broken away from the glacier for good. When you see it, remember this video, because you will already understand exactly what that headline means, and just as important, what it does not mean. It will not flood a single street that day, but it will mark the exact moment the last break finally came off one of the most dangerous glaciers on the entire planet, the same glacier whose obituary is already written, quietly waiting to be published. Antarctica might feel like it is a million miles away from your everyday life, tucked away at the bottom of the world where almost nobody ever sets foot. But the ocean connects every single one of us to whatever happens down there. Whether we stop to think about it or not, a crack in the ice, all the way at the bottom of the world is worth paying attention to. Out row. If this video changed the way you think about something as simple as a chunk of ice sitting at the bottom of the world, do me a favor and smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel keep telling true stories like this one, the wild kind that sound made up but are not. And if you want to be one of the first people to know the exact moment this ice shelf actually breaks away, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are going to keep watching this glacier closely, and when that headline finally drops, you will already understand exactly what it means instead of scrolling right past a confusing headline like everyone else. Before you go, I want to ask you something. If the ocean crept a little closer to your home every single year, slowly but surely, would you stay and fight it? Or would you already be packing your bags? Let me know what you would actually do down in the comments. I am curious. And if stories like this one get your brain going, check out the video right there on your screen, because this is definitely not the only slow motion disaster quietly building up somewhere in the world right now.